Hello, everyone. This interview is audio only. We decided, Patrick and I, that Patrick didn't want to deal with the usual harassment he gets from women when his image appears online, and so we're going to do audio only. That, or I could not get my video software to work, so it's one of those two. Patrick, if you go ahead and say hi to everybody.
Hello. Thanks for having me over here.
So this is Patrick Swenson, and Patrick is a writer, and he has been the editor of the much beloved and unfortunately no longer in existence Talebones magazine, and he's also the publisher through Fairwood Press. So his career has spanned a lot of the sort of recent history in publishing. But let's first talk about books that you have out.
Great. Well, the current one that just came out last summer was a sequel to my first novel. So I guess the first novel was out in summer of 2014 from Tor, the Ultra Thin Man. It's basically kind of my space opera noir, marriage of mystery and science fiction. And then the second one is the Ultra Big Sleep. And that came out last summer. And down the road, there's a third one in the series when I figure that out.
Right.
And everybody always goes, oh, it's going to be the Ultra Maltese Falcon, right? It's like, no, probably not. And then I also, it's like, that's a little bit too specific.
Yeah.
I'll think of something that works. It's 100 years out from now. It's there's a union of multiple worlds, 8 worlds, and I have a couple of detectives who they've been down their luck with their private eye business, so they've contracted with a larger intelligence organization. And they're standing in the way of a interstellar terrorist network, and they're forced to flee and kind of set up for treason, and turns out it's all about cover up for something even more insidious. So an alien plot, of course.
So it's a mystery.
So a lot of the go ahead.
It's a mystery, effectively, or?
Yeah, it's a mystery. Yeah, science fiction mystery, but with a lot of noir tropes. A little nod to noir. I mean, the Ultra Thin Man, the Thin Man is one of the classic, noir novel, but it really has nothing in common with the story other than some of the tropes and one character name by accident. But and then the Ultra Big Sleep just takes it to next level a year later as the larger story arc gets a little bit bigger. So it's really fun. It was really fun to do. It's kind of a thriller paced, a lot of cliffhanger endings and chapters and that kind of thing. And then I did I have a little small novelette, small paperback book out called Slightly Ruby. That's a prequel story to the first novel. So those are the books I have out, other than a couple projects I've edited or co-edited.
Yeah, and you've been writing for quite a while, so it's not like this is your first novel, it's your first published novel. But you were spending a lot of time being an editor and a publisher and other things, I know, before you were able to get your books out.
I remember David Hartwell was told my agent when I sold the first book, he said he'd been waiting for this book for like 15 years. Right. I said, which is about how long I did Talebones. So, right. Yeah, go figure.
Well, you've been a fixture in science fiction for quite a while. So Patrick and I originally met back when I was at Clarion West. Patrick, you're a graduate of Clarion West or Clarion?
Clarion West.
Clarion West as well.
Way back in the dark ages, 1986. So...
Yeah, I'm not going to say how long ago mine was, but yeah. And so, but at that point you were the editor-in-chief of Talebones magazine, which people in the industry still miss dearly, even though, we understand certainly why you would shut down a magazine. It takes up your entire life and it has a very hard time paying for itself. But why don't you talk a little bit about Talebones and how it got started and its run there for 15 years?
Yeah, it started in 1995, so this was... said about 10 years after Clarion, and I was doing some writing and published a few short stories here or there, and mostly I was working on novels and not getting too far. And then when I decided to do the magazine, my ex-wife and I put it together to start with, and we just wanted to do something that nobody else was doing, kind of niche, entertaining but literate stories. The early issues really straddled the edge of dark fiction right into horrific, never a straight horror, but we were 4 times a year and never missed. And then I started Fairwood Press in 2000, and we went to 3 issues a year. And then my son Orion came along in 2002, and we went down to 2 issues a year. And we had 1 year where we did a sleeve Talebones drive, and we were pretty well set up.
Yeah.
I was actually on my own at that point, and it was just more of a decision to get more time for my own writing and such, because the press was taking a time, and it's a small corporation, and then Talebones was a separate business, and I teach full time.
Right.
So it's like, if I want to write more, one of these things have got to go. And Fairwood was actually making money, and figured that's what I would go to, and I could always maybe bring it back down the road. I did a best of Talebones anthology the year after it closed, with the idea of the next year doing a yearly anthology of Talebones, kind of a Talebones anthology. But then there was a whole 2 years of no slush pile, and I went, oh, this is kind of nice.
Right.
But I do miss it, and I have had times, even this year has been another year where I've been going, maybe something down the road, I was thinking about it.
Well,
I'm always thinking about it.
Yeah, so Talebones during its day was beloved by authors because you were always known for having a very good eye for stories that were excellent but didn't necessarily have a fit elsewhere in the market. So I'll go ahead and tell a Talebones story that I had. When I was at Clarion West, one of my classmates wrote this story that was just gorgeous. It was called Bird of Paradise, but it was kind of horror but not really. It was kind of historical fiction but not really. It was fantasy, but it had a dark element to it, but it had a young protagonist. I mean, it just didn't fit. He sent it all around, and he and I were emailing one night, and I'm like, well, have you sent it to Talebones? Because Talebones is probably your place. Talebones is, Patrick's going to appreciate how great this story is. And he said, I haven't, and he did, and I got an email from both of you like a couple weeks later saying that you'd picked up that story. But that was Talebones' reputation, for just, excellent stories that didn't necessarily fit anywhere else.
Right.
So we were.
It was nice. It was nice because I would get a lot of pro level stories, for a semi-prozine, barely a semi-prozine, because people would figure out this is a good story for Talebones.
Right.
So it's one cent a word, which was what it was. It went up to 2 cents for a lead story later on, but it's like some people would send me their pro stories first thing because it's like, this has got a better chance of Talebones than at Asimov's or what have you. It's like I was always grateful for that, although I would always be the first to say, do market top down, but it was really nice to have really good quality stuff in there.
Yeah. Yeah, so
yeah, I remember that story.
So then, out of Talebones, you're saying Fairwood Press kind of grew, right? Yeah, right.
And I wasn't really planning on it, and it was actually Patrick O'Leary who pushed me to do it because he said, hey, you want to do my collection? It's like 1/3 poetry, 1/3 stories, 1/3 essays, and New York doesn't want it. I'm thinking, yeah, no wonder.
Yeah.
Right? And I said, I'd love to, because I published this first short story in Talebones, and another one was coming out. I said, let me figure out how to do that, because at that time, Talebones was a saddle-stapled magazine.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't even perfect bound yet, I don't think. And so, yeah, and then that's when I started looking, and I found the Lightning Source in its infancy. It had been around a few years, that's what I've used since the beginning. And I've seen all the improvements they've made, and I was not taking any, electronic rights. This is way before, Kindle and the proliferation of ebook markets.
Right.
But it was also kind of the dawn of digital printing and print-on-demand publishing, and some of those early books had their challenges. The ones they would the covers would curve.
Yes.
Up. The temperature got a little off, and it was like, okay, we got 10 pages missing. My first author, Patrick O'Leary, emailed me once and said, so my sister got a copy of my book, and she was about halfway through, and then the whole thing just kind of disintegrated. The binding just fell apart, right?
Yeah,
another guy brought the book to his signing and to sign, and he opened it to sign. It was somebody else's book inside completely. Oh. Right. That's when they started doing the barcoding thing in the back of the books. But
right.
So it was still an infant
right.
type of situation. So it's made huge strides and great improvements. But I was kind of there early on.
I don't know how early on Fairwood Press has existed, but you published Jim Van Pelt's Summer of the Apocalypse. Was that one of your earliest ones, or was that kind of a little bit further along?
It was fairly early. The first Van Pelt was earlier. So 2000 is when I did the first book, the Patrick O'Leary book, and that was the only book I did. Mm-hmm. And then in 2001, I did the Bruce Taylor collection, Final Trick of Funny Man, which actually was a reprint from Jeff Vandermeer's Ministry of Whimsy Press had done it originally. So we did that. That was the only book I did that year. And so Jim's collection, Strangers and Beggars, first story collection, was what I did the third year. And Summer of the Apocalypse, the novel, came out in 2006. And it is still my best-selling title. I mean, that book sold great. And then it went off for a year, and then for some reason, we think it got tied to John Joseph Adams' Wastelands anthology on Amazon or something, because the apocalypse in the title, and it just went berserk again. And then it just has always been very steady. And then when the ebook went out, it's because I went back and got ebook rights for a lot of these things, and then it took off. And so it still sells pretty well even today, 11 years later. Yeah.
Well, that as I recall, that book kind of put Fairwood Press on the map as a small boutique publisher. There's a lot of small publishers out there, but Fairwood Press is, one of the much more reputable ones, and partially due to Summer of the Apocalypse, but mainly because of the quality of the stories that you pick and the way that you treat the authors. How many books a year now does Fairwood Press tend to put out?
It's I used to say about 5 or 6, but lately I've been saying 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Last year I had 8, which is the most I've ever had, and it's just me on Fairwood Press. One person, nobody, not even interns. So 8 plus trying to write plus son who's in high school and with special needs and teaching. It was a challenge, and then 5 of them came out at the same time at Worldcon in Kansas City. So it was my summer because I was trying to get everything finished and done in advance, and you need leeway in advance for advanced reading copies, reviews, and it was never again 5 in a row. But all 5 were going to be there, and at the table, and that was my best year ever at a table anywhere. So I'd say 6 or 7 is more likely. It's better for my health. Right now, I have 4 for this year, but a 5th one possibly coming late in the year that I have not decided on yet. So, or actually have 5 and maybe 6. Sorry, that's it. Well, there's a Van Pelt thing in the works, maybe.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that at Mile High Con. But so it's not unique, but it's unusual. Is that in your case, it isn't that you've got a huge slush pile of novels that you're looking at. Pretty much, it's pro authors who come to you for the most part. Wouldn't you say that?
Right. I've no slush pile. I've never been open to submissions. It's always been I get to pick my projects. I mean, early on it was, I want that book and I want this book, and it was 1 or 2 a year and 3. And since it's been 6 or 7, I'm going like, hey, I loved your stories and Talebones. What do you got? Got anything for me? Are you interested in a collection, or you have a novel? Or they would come to me, and I had the freedom to go, sorry, I'm not open to submissions. Or I go, hell yes, I'm not saying no to you, right?
Right.
I can't remember what year it was. What year was World Fantasy was in, I think, San Diego. And in November, I have no idea what I'm doing next year. I had nothing for the next year. And I went to had a table at World Fantasy. And by the end of World Fantasy, my list was full for next year. And it was 6 or 7. So it's like, well, I know where to find writers. And here I am.
Right.
Some of them came to me, and I bug people who are there, and it works that way. It really works well for me because Beth Cato, who's got a collection coming out from me in the fall, I saw at Worldcon, and we were hanging out at the George R. R. Martin party, and we were just talking. I said, "So, you got a collection? Have you ever thought about a collection?" It's like, "Oh, that'd be cool. I'd love to work with you." And she'd done a really nice blurb for my books, and she said, "All right, let's pinky swear and let's go." And so that's a lot of it happens for me. But you got to be out there and available to kind of get that. And
well, and
a lot of that is the time that I've spent, getting those contacts and stuff.
Well, and building a reputation as an editor and having a good eye for good stories. How's the distribution model evolved? Because when Fairwood Press first started up, like you were saying, POD was, it was almost like, it wasn't that much better than a Xerox copier and a glue binding.
Yeah.
So how much would you say it's changed then over the course of Fairwood's Press for when you started out to to now?
In many ways, there are not a lot of changes from the way it started. The model has been pretty much the same. Mostly, it's been more frequency, more books per year, and keeping new product out there. Whereas those first few years, it was like, hey, I got a book out, I got 2 books out. But if you're not getting new stuff out there, even if it's different people each time, people are saying, hey, these guys are doing good work. They got more than just a couple things out there. The only thing that's different is I have a few more contacts with independent bookstores and have had more sales that way by picking up orders for those stores or for signings. And I will accept returns for those kind of things, whereas, for an event and that kind of thing.
Right. So you really were an early adopter of what is now almost mainstream and almost normal.
It really, yeah, it really was, yeah, because I'm trying to think back. That's 17 years ago, but those options were pretty set early on with the distribution system.
Let's take this back to talk about your career. So you had your first book come out from Tor, and then you actually brought the second book out from Fairwood Press. And I guess what we'll just say about Tor is that Tor has had a major management restructuring, and they let go of a lot of properties for all kinds of reasons. And and so yours was one of those.
And I don't think it's not specific just to Tor either. I mean, there are a lot of the big five that are going through those kind of things.
Yeah.
My editor was David Hartwell, who passed away last year, and he gave me this book deal. He said, one of the things too that came into the idea was marketing and the numbers, and me pushing this to Tom Doherty and also to the sales staff was, here's Patrick with a history with Talebones and Fairwood and a known quantity, and he's built up, and he said that might be enough to make the numbers jump enough so we can get the next book, because it was just a 1-book deal with an option in the next.
Okay.
So it's okay, cool, that's cool. And so it's sold okay, but just not enough. Okay. So, but I understand numbers. If the numbers were bad, the numbers were bad. And if I sold as many copies of what they sold in hardcover, even with my trade paperbacks, it'd be a success for Fairwood. Right. So,
right. But
I don't have obviously the overhead that they do.
Right.
So so when they passed on it, David had passed on it. He passed on it only about a month before he passed away, and so I was in this quandary. It was World Fantasy in Saratoga. What am I doing? I was asking everybody, what should I do? What should I do? Mm-hmm. I was one of those folks, even just 10 years ago, who said, don't self-publish, don't, money goes to the writer, you should do it. And my agent, I'd already seen the success people were having independently. So my agent said, you should do it, right? It's a second book in a series. No larger publisher is going to pick it up since they don't own the first. You go to a small press, but who do you know that has a pretty good, well-established small press with a little bit of street cred? So, I do.
Right.
Do it. It's not the stigma it used to be, and people make good money on it, and nobody really cares what's on the spine if it's a good book. Yeah. So, in fact, he said, he said I wouldn't even do an imprint. I would just leave it under Fairwood. And so I said, all right, I'm going to do it. And I got to do all the things I wanted to do. And I got to put on the bio I wanted to put on the book, and, got it in there right. And, it went through and got the art, and went through and had readers and editors and got it out there in much less time.
Right.
It's like, I sold the book to Tor in 2012, and it was 2 years and 2 months before it came out. I made the decision on book 2 in December, January, by the time I finally decided, and it came out that fall at World Fantasy. So it was, or that summer, actually, somewhere in last summer, Kansas City. So less than a year for that to come out. So lots of advantages, lots of disadvantages because I don't have the distribution that Tor does. Right.
Well, and so you say there's not really any mid-list anymore at the big publishers, and to a certain extent, the mid-list has gone indie, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, because those of us that do publish ourselves, we have the lower overhead, and we have to, fewer copies counts as a success for us, and we're able to
Right,
you know,
because
support ourselves.
you're in the author, very almost.
For my romance, yeah.
Yeah, you're doing really well with that here too. So
for a romance author, I'm not doing well, but for just somebody who makes, I make enough to live off of, which is in writing a win.
Great.
You know?
There are very few writers published traditionally that can
right.
can live off their writing.
Right.
Not without a lot of fear.
Yeah, I mean, which aspiring writers, I think, who listen to my interviews sometimes probably want to cry. The important thing to understand is to understand the economics, to understand the options, to to have the reasonable expectations and all of that, and to know that there are excellent small presses out there who might be good options for people who don't necessarily want to do it all themselves.
Right.
I mean, I've seen your second book right alongside your first book. There's no way you could tell that they're from two different presses. I mean,
yeah. So I wanted to get the feel of it, but still be its own entity.
Yeah. And I think you did a great job. One last plug for Patrick's books.
The Ultra Thin Man.
Yeah.
And the Ultra Big Sleep.
And then a third book we hope coming. That is not going to be the Ultra Maltese Falcon, but that would be cool.
I've looked a lot. There's the third one where it goes into I'm very much a seat or pants writer, so right. I only have like in the book too, pretty much people go, well, there's the end of that. That looks pretty definitively, that's the end of it. But then there's just enough hooks for me to figure out what happens beyond that, because the overall larger arc is not quite done. So there would be, there's some science involved to figure out what I'm going to do with that. Right. But so it's like there's an old new movie called Dark Passage. I don't know if you know that one. Which would fit really well considering what that movie's about, with where Humphrey Bogart, and pretty much you don't see his face the whole time, and then there's anyway, so the Ultra Dark Passage. But then go, well, is that too horror? Horror looking and not enough science fiction. I guess with a good cover, they can change everything. So I don't know. The jury's still out on book 3. So and right now I'm not working on that. I'm working on something completely different, a ghost murder mystery set out in the Olympic rainforest with magic and music, and I'm really loving right now as I work on that.
And then that's something you'll probably also shop to the big publishers first, do you think?
I still have my agent, so I'll send it to him and see if he can sell it, and if not, then I know where to go.
Exactly.
I know where to go with it. So
excellent. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for the interview.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.